Hello everybody and welcome to the second webinar from the RMT, today on mental well-being and the workplace. I'm Anna from the TUC and you can see I'm joined here by Ivor, who I'll be handing over to in a second. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we get going. You'll see on the right hand side of the screen there is a chat panel that you can use to talk to each other, to exchange tips and ideas, and as I can see already you're talking about snacks and food, possibly because it's almost lunchtime, and that's great to see. Ivor apparently has cake, so everyone else get the snack of your choice. You'll see underneath us here there's an ask a question button. Please post any questions there for the team. I will be introducing the team in a second and we'll get to them during the presentation. So I'm going to hand over to Ivor now just to talk you through what we'll be doing today.
Okay, so hi everyone, and thanks for attending today's webinar. As the title suggests, the topic is mental health in the workplace, and we'll be taking you through some of the key points to be aware of and how you can address them. We'll also point you in the direction of further learning and training. What we clearly cannot do in 1 hour is make you an authority on mental health. So initially, we'll have a short video on the black dog, which is well understood euphemism for depression. We'll then have a presentation from Lisa Evans, giving a broad perspective of mental health and well-being. After that, we'll hear from our special guest this week, which is Jonathan Havard. I think that's how you got the name right. I'm sure he'll tell me later if I've not. Who is the RMT members' Health and Safety Support Officer. Health and safety is where mental well-being sits within the union machinery, so he can offer a perspective from the union. We'll then take presentations from you via the question tab at the bottom, as Anna's already said. Please do put any questions you have in there and we'll put them to the speakers at the appropriate time. Following on from that, we'll look at how we can affect change in our workplace by educating managers and advocating for better awareness and response to issues raised, managing the managers, as it were. Finally, a short piece on where to go next for learning and training in the subject of mental health and well-being through RMT Learning and Education, who put a bit of a pack together last week around that. So I'm now going to hand you back to Anna, who will take full control of the technology for the rest of the webinar. Thanks, Anna.
Thanks, Ivor. One other little housekeeping thing I forgot to mention is don't worry if you miss anything or you want to check something, because we are making a recording of this that you'll be able to access later today or later in the week. So I'm going to load up the video now that Ivor mentioned. I will set it going now. It lasts about 4 minutes, so you won't hear from Ivor and I during this time, but we'll come back to you as soon as the video has finished.
I had a black dog. His name was Depression. Whenever the black dog made an appearance, I felt empty and life just seemed to slow down. He could surprise me with a visit for no reason or occasion. The black dog made me look and feel older than my years. When the rest of the world seemed to be enjoying life, I could only see it through the black dog. Activities that usually brought me pleasure suddenly ceased to. He liked to ruin my appetite. He chewed up my memory and my ability to concentrate. Doing anything or going anywhere with the black dog required superhuman strength. At social occasions, he'd sniff out what confidence I had and chase it away. My biggest fear was being found out. I worried that people would judge me. Because of the shame and stigma of the black dog, I was constantly worried that I'd be found out. So I invested vast amounts of energy into covering him up. Keeping up an emotional lie is exhausting. Black dog could make me think and say negative things. He could make me irritable and difficult to be around. He would take my love and bury my intimacy. He loved nothing more than to wake me up with highly repetitive and negative thinking. He also liked to remind me how exhausted I was going to be the next day. Having a black dog in your life isn't so much about feeling a bit down, sad or blue. At its worst, it's about being devoid of feeling altogether. As I got older, the black dog got bigger and he started hanging around all the time. I'd chase him off with whatever I thought might send him running. But more often than not, he'd come out on top. Going down became easier than getting up again. So I became rather good at self-medication, which never really helped. Eventually, I felt totally isolated from everything and everyone. The black dog had finally succeeded in hijacking my life. When you lose all joy in life, you can begin to question what the point of it is. Thankfully, this was the time that I sought professional help. This was my first step towards recovery and a major turning point in my life. I learned that it doesn't matter who you are, the black dog affects millions and millions of people. It is an equal opportunity mongrel. I also learned that there was no silver bullet or magic pill. Medication can help some, and others might need a different approach altogether. I also learned that being emotionally genuine and authentic to those who are close to you can be an absolute game changer. Most importantly, I learnt not to be afraid of the black dog, and I taught him a few new tricks of my own. The more tired and stressed you are, the louder he barks, so it's important to learn how to quiet your mind. It's been clinically proven that regular exercise can be as effective for treating mild to moderate depression as antidepressants, so go for a walk or a run and leave the mutt behind. Keep a mood journal. Getting your thoughts on paper can be cathartic and often insightful. Also keep track of the things that you have to be grateful for. The most important thing to remember is that no matter how bad it gets, if you take the right steps, talk to the right people, black dog days can and will pass. I wouldn't say that I'm grateful for the black dog, but he's been an incredible teacher. He forced me to reevaluate and simplify my life. I learnt that rather than running away from my problems, it's better to embrace them. The black dog may always be part of my life, but he'll never be the beast that he was. We have an understanding. I've learned through knowledge, patience, discipline and humour, the worst black dog can be made to heal. If you're in difficulty, never be afraid to ask for help. There is absolutely no shame in doing so. The only shame is missing out on life.
Hi Anna, hi everyone.
Hi Lisa. So I think I'm going to just get your PowerPoint loaded up now, and there it is. So okay, I am going to duck out and let you get going with your presentation about mental wellbeing, and apologies again about the video, but I'll work on it.
No problem. Can you put the first slide on for me, please, Anna? That's great. So today's topic obviously is mental wellbeing in the workplace, and this ties in with a circular that we sent out last week to all of our members, because it was Mental Health Awareness Week, and the theme of Mental Health Awareness Week last week was kindness. So we thought it'd be interesting. We don't intend on giving you professional advice. We're obviously not able to do that. It's to signpost you really, to say, you know, we are aware of issues in the workplace, and this is something that industrial reps, health and safety reps, and ULRs can work on together with management. So working conditions and environment in the workplace can have a huge impact on mental health. And equally, someone's mental health can have a significant impact to perform well in their job. So it's clinically proven. Somebody has really good mental health, they're more able to do the job and be more productive in their job. Next screen, please, Anna. What is mental health? Well, mental health is about the whole person, if you like. So how we think, how we feel, and how we behave. Because if we're not thinking right, it will have an impact on how we're feeling, which then alternatively has an impact on how we behave. And there's something in there. It's not about what others see, it's about what I see. So you may be one of these people, or you may work with people, or family members that are always happy, always bubbly, but actually inside they feel very differently about themselves. And hopefully through this, and towards the end, we'll give you some tools and tips and websites where we can actually start to look at how we can support people, but also how we can create an environment in the workplace of good mental health and well-being. Next slide, please, Anna. So we're talking a little bit about work-related stress. So HSE is a health and safety executive. You'll see in the chat, I've put some websites that we use to put this together. Some really useful stuff on there. What website isn't on there is the RMT's website, because we know you're all familiar with that. But the health and safety executive's formal definition of work-related stress is the adverse reaction people have to excessive pressures or other types of demand placed on them at work. And I'm not sure, if anybody's willing, but in the past, I've massively suffered from work-related stress, not with RMT, I'd add to say, but I think sometimes if your workload's too high, if expectations on you are too much, you do have an adverse reaction, and the pressures that are put on you can then move on significantly into your personal, your home life. So having really good work-related health, if you like, and trying to minimize stress is really, really important. Next slide, please, Anna. So did you know, it's just some little facts. I know some of our team was saying, have we got a quiz? Have we got a quiz? And we haven't got a quiz today. But just if you're aware, 1 in 4 people will experience a mental health issue in their lifetime. So, it goes on averages that 5 of us probably that are here today, that are watching this webinar, will have suffered from a mental health issue during their lifetime. 1 in 6 people experience mental health problems in the workplace. So that's quite a high proportion if you think purely in the workplace, 1 in 6 people. 12.7% of all sickness absence days in the UK can be attributed to mental health conditions. So if you think to your management, if you were trying to get them on board with doing some learning around mental health or supporting people with mental health, they're losing 12.7% in sickness down to mental health conditions. 70 million work days are lost each year due to mental health problems in the UK. Massive effect on the economy and on business. 2.4 billion is lost by industry every year. And 70 million added productivity can be the result of addressing mental health and well-being at work. So it's something we're saying to reps, speak to management. We give you some tips at the end on what you can do. Ivor's going to do a section on managing the manager, if you like, but it sings for itself, doesn't it? You don't have to try and convince them. The figures are there. If they get on board with this, not only will it help individuals, but it'll help the business as well. Next slide, please, Anna. So where do employers' responsibilities lie? Well, yes, they do have them. Even if somebody doesn't have a mental health illness when they start work or when they're employed to do the job, but employers have a responsibility, a duty of care, if you like, to make sure that the working environment is safe. And I think you've got to always remember that mental health and well-being is part of health and safety. It's exactly the same. Employers have a duty to protect staff from discrimination that arises from a mental health issue. So if somebody is treated differently in the workplace because they've got a mental health issue, if they're discriminated against, employers have a duty of care to protect staff from that. But also, really important, employers have a duty to carry out risk assessments to ensure that it's safe for somebody to work. And again, don't forget that includes mental health. Next slide, please, Anna. So the argument for preventing mental ill health at work is UK businesses can save up to 8 billion per year. Workplace intervention programs, which is something we're really keen on at the moment, work for workers and bosses. So for an individual, it will have an impact on them, on their own mental health and well-being, which will have an impact on their personal and home life, but it will make them more productive at work, but also it'll make them happier and morale will be higher at work. So the arguments there, the bottom line is, the arguments here, the cost of mental health is not just a financial issue, and costs count most bosses, but it's the personal issues as well. It's not just financial, but bosses may only listen to that, the financial issues, But in getting on board with this, and I do think employers are more likely to get on board with mental health issues at the moment and do some training and some learning, some workshops. There's lots of things that bosses can do. And it's something that reps should be knocking on the door of the bosses and saying, come on, this is what it'll mean to you, but just think of what it'll mean to individuals in the workplace. Next slide, please, Anna. So creating the right environment. So, you know, I think we've all heard the slogan, it's good to talk. And I think mental and physical health should be equal. This is what we've got to remember. So we hear all the time, if you've got a broken leg, it's something you can see, it's something you can feel. And it's something that's easily identifiable, whereas a mental health issue may not be. But they are equal. They deserve the respect both ways. So bosses, you know, depression, mental health issues, stress in the workplace, bipolar, you know, there's lots of issues that people have that can be easily treated, but you need the right support from management in the workplace. So it's identifying that, creating the right environment where it's okay to talk about mental health issues, you know, with your colleagues, with your bosses, having regular one-to-ones with the managers. How are you feeling? How are you doing today? Well, you know, I'm not too happy about this. Having that environment where it's quite open and honest. I know it's difficult for some people to talk, but as a rep or as an individual, is it difficult for you to ask someone, how are you feeling today? Are you okay? You seem a little bit quiet. You're a bit under the weather. Is there anything you'd like to talk about? And getting this, the final point is positive attitude towards mental health. So something that, you know, we don't shy away from. We encourage open conversation and including management in that conversation. Next slide, please, Anna. So next steps, you know, there's some next steps we can take, and we're going to go back to these later, and some training that we can do. But approach management and ask for a meeting on mental health wellbeing can be quite daunting, but you've got some arguments there. The websites that I've put up earlier on the chat, lots of facts on there for businesses as well as individuals. So having that sit down and saying, look, let's talk about mental health and wellbeing. Do you realise, you know, ask the question, how many days are lost? What's our sickness absence like on mental health issues? Is it something we can work together on? Work in partnership is the next point, to highlight good mental health at work, that open door policy, that no shame, that let's talk about it, let's do risk assessments, let's find out, let's do a temperature check, let's find out how people are feeling. That will help to promote create a positive environment in the workplace. So making sure people are supported, but making sure people have the tools to support others as well. And we don't mean being a counsellor or being a coach or giving professional advice, just being somebody that, you know, people can come to, or knowing what to do, knowing how to identify if we think people have poor mental health or if we think they need some support. It says they identify key people to undertake training. That could start with you, branch officials that are watching this webinar now, ULRs, health and safety reps. There's an absolute, you know, plethora of training out there at the moment. If you just want to do 15 minutes a day, we can point you in the right direction. I'm currently doing a level 2 mental health first aid course. Really, really good, learning a lot from that. You can have a qualification. We do have counselling courses that are available at the moment, free of charge. So there's lots and lots you can do, but identifying key people, asking management to support that. You know, can we identify together a group of people that can be mental health trained in first aid, mental health awareness, lots of positive workshops and e-notes and things there. I will post them in the chat later on during Iva's talk, but happy to signpost anybody if you want to contact me afterwards. But also the other thing is promoting mental health awareness courses. Any of the team will be happy to provide you with posters, help you do them, send emails to bosses, anything we can do to help support you, to help you support others in the workplace on mental health awareness, we're more than happy to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. That was really helpful and lots of great suggestions there, I think, for taking forward the mental well-being and the workplace agenda, and lots of ideas to sort of get the conversation started, really. Okay, so next up, we're going to be joined by Jonathan. Here he is. So I'm going to hand over to Jonathan now to talk to us a bit more about mental health from a health and safety perspective. And Lisa's going to stay with us to answer any questions that you might have about the presentation. So she'll disappear for a bit, but she will stay with us. So yeah, like I said, don't forget to put any questions in the panel below us for answering later. So Jonathan, over to you.
Thanks very much, and thanks for inviting me onto this very important issue that we're discussing today. Yeah, and I'm Jonathan Havard, Members Health and Safety Support Officer at RMT. I've been in position here for about 4 months. I've been around in the trade union movement for quite a while longer. I was about 19 years in the Nautilus International Union. That's Merchant Navy, Maritime Specialists. And I've been a civil servant before that. So lots of different experience, but glad to be here at the RMT. And this issue, I mean, important anyway, but we see, you may have read in the papers on social media about the level of depression amongst school children at the moment and the counselling sessions they're getting. And it's important to say that, you know, when I was growing up, there was a stigma. There is no stigma attached to mental health issues at all. Lisa was talking about visible illnesses. You know, you can see a broken leg, but you can't necessarily see a broken mind, is the phrase I'm thinking of. And some of us may have experienced this ourselves, may have seen it in those close to us, family or friends. There are different types as well. There are maybe short-term mental health issues, such as those who suffered bereavement or other stress in their life, like a relationship breakdown, etc. But there are many who there's no, to the outsider's point of view, no logical reason why they should be feeling this way. Doesn't make it any less an illness, and doesn't make it any less important that we support these colleagues. And this is a union matter. It's a matter that our union takes seriously. And around about the time that I was joining RMT, one of my first tasks was to proofread a document that we produced, the campaigning for mental wellbeing at work. This is available on the RMT website. So do have a look. Just type in RMT mental wellbeing, you'll find it. And I'm going to just talk about a few things in that document. And in the introduction, the General Secretary, Mick Cash, has said, you know, it's the union's job to improve and defend working conditions. That's our job. But it's also our job to defend our members who suffer with issues of mental health. So this issue is being taken seriously by the very top of our union. And we and my small department will give every support it can. And in future, I understand this is the second webinar you've done, and we're happy to promote future webinars in any way we can. And if you want our involvement again, we'll be happy to do so. So why is mental health a trade union issue? Mental health difficulties at work can be caused or worsened by factors such as sleep-unfriendly shift patterns, antisocial working hours, which may lead to diminishing contact with your friends and family, verbal and physical abuse, traumatic incidents at work, excessive workload, bullying, harassment, aggressive management, insecure employment. I'm thinking of those who maybe are on 0-hour contracts, and pressure from harsh performance and attendance regimes. So you can see there that there are direct work-related matters, work-related issues that can lead to mental health problems. some of them caused by the management, shift patterns, antisocial hours, etc., excessive workload, pressure, and others from the behaviour of colleagues or from customers, passengers, verbal, physical abuse, traumatic incidents, bullying, harassment, etc. So you've got the two factors there. You've got the factors caused by poor management or poor management reaction, and also the behaviour of others, be they colleagues or be they customers. So when we as RMT look at campaigning on mental health issues, the kind of things that we can focus on: increase awareness of problems with stress in the workplace. Again, Lisa referred to stress in the workplace earlier. The need to ensure that the employer takes action. Bring to light various issues facing people with mental health problems and the causes of those problems. Point the way towards practical solutions and examples of good practice. Increase people's understanding of mental health in the workplace and the community. Dispel the myths and fears about people with mental health problems and encourage those affected to talk about their experiences. Encourage people with mental health problems to become active in their workplace communities and the union, and to engage with local support and campaign groups and charities to build relationships and access support and services. So again, and this is the kind of work I'm seeing by the colleagues who are organising this webinar today. And if there's any way that we can support and share best practice, look towards solutions for employers rather, to prevent their employees from suffering in this way, then we'll do so. And again, encourage those who are suffering not only to become active in their workplace and communities, but also in the union, to share their knowledge, share their experiences, and therefore help others. I mean, just a different example. One of my closest friends, who was a colleague in a previous work life, suffered with issues of alcohol and drug abuse. He came through that, and he is now the head of a charity which assists those recovering from such problems. So it's often those who've been in the middle, right at the centre of these issues, who are best placed to help and support those who are going through similar times. Just bear with me. So, organising and supporting workers with mental health issues. Reasons why those who have got problems maybe don't play an active part in their union. Maybe they've never been asked. Maybe there are structures, or rather there aren't structures in the union that represent the particular grades that they're in. So many people with mental health problems can face discrimination and prejudice, but they feel invisible, they feel unrepresented in their workplace and indeed the union. So they may initially feel comfortable discussing their issues and concerns with those who've had similar experiences. And I think this, as I was saying, this may lead to the confidence and the ability to share to a wider audience, and those who are in that position currently, who haven't got the strength, who haven't maybe haven't been approached, don't know who to approach to benefit from that experience. So to finish off, some things that union representatives, union activists may want to consider: organising workplace forums for members with mental health problems, talking to members informally about their experiences, organise training, kind of what we're doing now, encouraging members with mental health problems to get actively involved, ensuring the union's equality structures are in place and supported. My colleague Jess Webb, who was invited today, she's the head of equalities and very, very keen on issues such as this. So I'll support her in all that work in terms of having the equality structures in place to support those in need. Engage with local campaign groups and charities, as I said earlier, and campaign on stress. Things to think about. Developing relationships, build on those to identify other allies. Identify issues and priorities, identify common ground. Involve existing members and activists. Develop and nurture new relationships. Organise joint events and activities that involve the wider community. So we, the union, and our members are the union. We're the opinion formers in the community as well as the workplace. So maybe we can think going forward about these kind of seminars, these kind of events being done in conjunction with others in the community to broaden experience, broaden knowledge. Thanks for that. I hope that was okay. I'll try and answer any questions that I can, and I'll be pleased to be involved in any future events that you organise. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Jonathan. I think that was really helpful and given us a lot of food for thought with taking this agenda forward. Okay, I'm just bringing everybody back. Hopefully Ivor is also there. There we go. Right, so...
Just joking.
Right. Let's see what questions we've had posted from our viewers. So, okay, are there any resources to support the case, particularly to managers, because they will ask for details or examples when you're making this case? So I don't know who wants to go first, but I'll hand over to you.
Lisa, do you want to?
Yeah, I think on the previous slides, and I'm happy to share the PowerPoint presentation with a bit more detail. Didn't put everything up on there, but there's financial implications that managers probably will listen to more than doing the right thing, if you like, or some managers. I'm not going to say they're all the same. So we've seen that the amount of days lost through sickness absence due to mental health issues. We've seen the case for productivity and morale in place, where it massively increases productivity, keeps people in work, keeps them more productive. How many days are lost and what the cost is to the economy. So there is a big financial impact for management. And I think sometimes if you're asking management for anything, if you like, I mean, we've had a chat in the side there, Sue saying they do have mental health advocates, but only management chosen ones. Well, it's an industrial issue, that really, but also there's lots we can do around that. To put a case forward to management through our NEC, through branch structures, there's lots of ways that we can address that. But I think one of the first steps is sitting down with management and asking them the questions. Ask them, have you done an impact study and seen how many people have been off with mental health issues? You know, do you know the advantages of having a protective and well-rounded workforce that supports people with mental health issues? There's lots of facts and figures we can provide you with that put the case forward. I think as well, training, if you like, your learning organisers, we have, and I will talk through it later, we have a full range of mental health awareness courses that are available at no cost to your management. And I think, so mental health first aid, for example, mental health awareness, counselling, supporting members with mental health, just a couple off the top of my head. I will go into in more detail. There's lots available out there. So tell management, actually, it won't cost you anything to put people through this training. And if management don't buy into that training, then, you know, people can do it in their own time for as little as 15 minutes a day, as I said. And I think just being a good colleague, if you like, a good comrade to people that you work with and trying to do something positive to help support them is a winning situation. But definitely, if anybody does want any facts and figures, we can provide them with that. I don't know if Jonathan had anything different to say from what I have about the argument to management.
Yeah, that was very well put, Lisa. I mean, I've got some figures here. The the cost to the economy. So this is from a study. Annual cost to employers of between 33 billion and 42 billion pounds. Over half that due to presenteeism, a new word for me. That's where individuals are less productive due to poor mental health, despite spending more hours at work. The rest of it's due to sickness, absence, and staff turnover. So you can see that kind of cost is not just down to those who are officially signed off sick because of issues. It's when they're in work and are poorly performing or not performing at their premium because they're unwell. Cost to taxpayers and to the government between £24 billion and £27 billion, and that includes costs of benefits, reduced tax revenue, etc. So the cost of the economy as a whole between £74 billion and £99 billion. So those are the kind of figures we're talking about. Sort of at a local level, as Lisa was saying, it's reduced productivity to the employer. Our biggest single employer, Network Rail, again, you can see the cost to taxpayers and government that I've outlined there. So yes, it's an economic issue as well as a health issue.
Ivor, did you want to add anything to those points?
Just briefly. So I mean, there's an awful lot of information out there on the web. Obviously, you have to be careful about where you pick that information up from as to how certain you can be of its veracity. But there's a lot of information on the TUC website alone. In fact, I think they've actually produced a couple of publications around mental wellbeing in the workplace. So it's certainly worth going to have a look at the TUC education site. And maybe I know for a fact there's a couple of short e-courses on there. And there's also, if you look in the publications section, there are definitely some really useful booklets in there where you can actually put together a business case, if you like. I'm not really sure I like that term, but that's what it is. It's a business case to managers, just to convince them that it's in their best interests. And of course, never forget to let them know that if it works, then it could be good for their CV as well, because they're always looking to climb up a greasy pole and looking for ways to shine in front of their bosses.
Thanks, Ivor. I've put a couple of links in the chat to the sites that Ivor was referring to, and they just adding some from ACAS also, which I think on mental health and mental wellbeing in the workplace and other issues. ACAS has some really great resources, actually. It's good for lots of different areas. Before we take another question, I've got a question, if that's okay. Just listening to the things that Lisa and Jonathan were saying a minute ago, that this is perhaps it's a cross union issue. Do you think there's a danger that it's perhaps compartmentalized as health and safety too much, that means it's kind of left to one group of people? It's not so much a question, but if you've got any comments on how this can be seen as it's for every rep, every type of rep, not just one particular title, if that makes sense.
Right at the beginning of my presentation, I mentioned about health and safety reps, industrial reps and ULRs. And I think sometimes we're all guilty of, this is your role. But I always say when I go in to speak to new ULRs in Doncaster, they're all interlinked. We all want the same aim, really, and that's to support our members and to make sure that their work life and their home life is the best it can be. And I think this is something that all three have a place to play in, and it's really good to work together as a team and for branches to get involved with this as well. Because in the questions here, somebody says they're passionate about wellbeing and they're a health and safety rep. Why not link up with a union learning rep and say, right, let's have a promotion day. Let's do a mental health awareness day. I've done them with some of my ULRs in Northern Rail, well, one in Leeds Station recently, and before lockdown, where all reps can get together. The industrial reps can look at the industrial issues around it. The health and safety reps can look at through a wellness and a well-being issue. And it is health. It is health. I think sometimes we think of safety all the time. And is it safe to work? Well, is it safe to work because of your health and because of your mental health, but your union learner reps there to put an argument to management about training too, and to liaise with learning organisers like myself and Ivor and the rest of the team to say what is available, what can we do. And I think on the back of Mental Health Awareness Week, so much out there at the moment, and so good if we could all work in partnership and all types of rep get involved and branches get involved in this. It's a no-brainer, really.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this cross-team working is applicable to so many areas, but particularly mental health. Ivor and Jonathan, did you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, just actually, it's an interesting correlation, because I remember 30 odd years ago now, I think it was, when the Health and Safety Act came into place. And actually, one of the key things that was driven home at all health and safety training was, whilst you have health and safety reps, and they're very important that we need them to highlight things, health and safety is everybody's responsibility, not just the health and safety rep. So we're all responsible for our own health and safety and the health and safety of everybody around us. And actually, that's a very well. The narrative is exactly the same for physical and mental well-being in the workplace. You know, we all have a responsibility. We all need to be made aware. I was just about to say stay alert, but I'm not going to use that. So we all need to be aware that there are people around us who may be having a bad day. They may be having a bad week. They may be going through a real bad period of depression. And as Lisa said in her presentation, some days they're in there smiling, laughing, joking, and you think everything's fine. But sometimes it's just worth talking to someone on their own and just saying, "Are you okay?" Although those three words can be so powerful sometimes, and we should all be prepared to do that for people around us. So it does sit for organisational purposes within health and safety, because it is essentially a health and safety matter, but it's not just a health and safety matter. It is very much broader than that. And I'll actually talk a little bit about that in the Managing the Managers session in a minute.
Thanks, Ivor. Yeah, it is. It touches every role, really, doesn't it? I think that's the key thing to take away. Before we take another question, did you want to add anything, Jonathan?
Ivor and Lisa have covered quite a lot there, and Ivor's quite right about people laughing and smiling, and sometimes that's why it's difficult to see that someone's got an issue, because they hide it so well. But yeah, working in silos, and we had this discussion just this morning with some of my team colleagues. You find a lot of people are doing the same or similar work in isolation, so there's duplication, and whereas there should be sharing of knowledge, saving time and energy, and actually getting a better result. So we need, yes, mental health is not just a health and safety issue; it's far wider than that. And I was saying when I did my spiel that we should be involved in not just unions but communities, charities, etc. All these individuals who have experience, who can share experience, and make our approach, make our understanding that much better. So yes, health and safety is a trade union wide issue, not just a health and safety issue, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And perhaps maybe before we were guilty of working in isolation figuratively, whereas we're literally doing it now, of course, which obviously increases that. Okay, so another question from our audience. Do you think that a lack of disability support in the workplace contributes to mental health? And if so, how could this be turned around?
Do you want to start first, Jonathan, this time?
I'll try. So the answer was, can the sort of ignoring of disability issues affect mental health? Of course. And I think I mentioned as well, I talked about minority groups, those who feel isolated, feel ignored, and one of those groups could be people with disabilities. Yes. And isolation, again, as we know, can lead to depression, can lead to mental illness. So yes, of course, but disabled people, of course, have a protected characteristic, as we say in union terms. So any discrimination against them is unlawful. So they have that additional protection, if you like, which we as trade unionists should be very aware of and should utilise. So if anyone is being in the slightest discriminated against in terms of disability by the employer not making any reasonable adjustments to make their work safe and as enjoyable as any work can be, then we can use the full weight of the law. So yes, there is definitely a link between disabled discrimination and mental well-being. Yeah.
I think we'd like to think it's an easy issue and it's easy sorted, and I think the question alone identifies that it's not always easy to do that. I'm not going to repeat what Jonathan said, but yes, I do think that there's pockets of people, there's minority groups in workplaces that the mental health can suffer more because of another issue that they have, such as a disability. But as Jonathan says, the Equality Act of 2010 identifies employers absolutely have a duty to protect those workers, but also to support them. And if you have somebody in the workplace who you do feel discriminated against, as Jonathan said, we as a union, as we're very good at doing, will put the full weight of the law against those employers, address and tackle the issue. I do think it's linked. One of the statistics I didn't put up on my slide that came across, and I've put the websites where the information came from, was that women in the workplace are twice more likely to suffer from a mental health issue than men. Now, I know we could have an argument about that and say, is this true? But I think sometimes you've got to look at different minority groups, and women are clearly one of those, where and the BME community, that comes up in some of the statistics. So I definitely think there is a link with minority groups and mental health issues, and we need to address those.
Yeah, I agree, absolutely. But I think we also need to understand that there are different kinds of discrimination within that. There is the obvious stuff where people don't put stuff in place that they're legally obliged to do. That's quite easy to deal with in a way, almost, because there's a framework around that. There's a machinery to deal with it. But then you've got the somebody I know actually used the term the other day, and it kind of describes it in a way. It is callous indifference. Is actually people don't know, but actually they don't care that they don't know because it's too difficult to think about. They've got budgets to worry about. They've got rosters to worry about. They've got 4 people off sick on shift. They just can't be bothered to deal with something as complex as they see it as that. And then there's also the unintended discrimination where people just don't think, you know, and that I think the callous indifference is a difficult one because you have to kind of build a case and develop that, and it requires quite a skilled rep or group of reps to actually deal with that because it can be quite complex and there's pushback against it and stuff like that. But the unintended stuff is really an issue for education, and that's where health and safety reps should join up with union learning reps and develop different ways of promoting that and explaining to people, well, how would you feel? Just think about it from this perspective for a minute, you know, and stuff like that. So, and again, there's lots of stuff already on TUC, but you can develop local stuff that you can use those resources to develop something more local and more appropriate to your workplace. But that again requires cross-working across reps and across unions and all sorts of stuff. But there's lots. It's a quite a complex subject when you bury down into it. But I think the original question was: do you think that the lack of physical support creates an issue for mental health? And yes, it certainly does. Not just only from the point of view of. I mean, I know somebody who works in an office environment, and they're a wheelchair user. And I guess that's kind of the sort of the stereotypical idea of somebody who's disabled. Obviously, there are a lot of other different disabilities around there, but this is a personal experience of mine. And there's a lot of stuff goes on, and people actually make a real effort to support them and to help them. But then they carry a burden of guilt. It's not reasonable that they carry that guilt, but they do carry that guilt because they feel that they're putting other people out. They feel that maybe they're being treated differently, quite rightly, not necessarily differently, but quite rightly they're being supported in other ways. But there's still an element of guilt from that perspective, and that can weigh on people's minds. So we just need to work out what works for the individual and actually address the individual needs rather than come up with lots of very clear, very clever plans across the board that fit everybody, because they don't fit everybody. So the answer is yes, it does, and it can very much affect people's mental health. And that's why we need reps in the workplace and colleagues in the workplace who can actually address those in the workplace in a sensitive way. Sorry, I rambled a bit there.
Interesting rambling, though. I wouldn't say, always very interesting. Okay, so we've answered all the questions we've received from the viewers. So the next bit of our webinar is going to be Ivor talking us through managing managers using machinery. But so Lisa's going to stay with us. But thank you, Jonathan, for joining us. And hopefully we'll see you on a webinar again soon. So over to Ivor to talk about managing managers.
Okay, thanks, Anna. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some of the practicalities of what we can do. And a lot of it is actually based around the leaflet that Jonathan was talking about, which I do recommend you get hold of. I will put up a link later. It's online. It's available online through the RMT website. And it talks a lot about the national perspective and what we should do to campaign. But it also offers some really useful advice that people can adapt to their own local area and make something out of. So just so we remember, so when we see someone who's showing signs of stress or struggling to cope, as I said earlier, most people's first instinct is to actually look the other way, when in fact a simple "are you okay" is often enough to start a conversation and possibly start a pathway to support for someone who's in a bad place. So it is important, whilst it is tempting to possibly just hopefully ignore it and it will go away. And that is a natural reaction for people. It's very important that we actually don't do that and we resist that and we actually make an effort to reach out. So in the pamphlet, it does actually state that mental ill health is on the rise, and it falls to us, the trade union movement, as always, to spearhead the campaign to reverse this trend. The mental health issues in the workplace have come to the fore as never before, with pressures at work increasing as years of deregulation, privatisation, outsourcing and austerity have seen the proliferation of 0 hours contracts, insecure and precarious work, a ruthless speed up imposed by employers determined to squeeze every last drop of profit from their workforces. Now, with the added pressures of dealing with COVID-19, enforced isolation, furlough and possible illness and bereavement, as is often the case, it falls to you and I at the coalface and the whole trade union movement to address these issues and reverse that trend. So how do we as individuals, as RMT reps, activists and members address the issues around mental well-being and support our workmates in their time of need? First of all, talk about the issues of mental health. When in the restroom or out in the workplace, wherever the opportunity arises, encourage others to join in the conversation. You might be surprised how many people you know who have suffered from mental ill health at some time in their life. Because we mustn't forget that people have periods of mental ill health. Some people, it's a lifelong debilitating illness, but a lot of people do recover and can recover. But if we don't discuss it because they fear the stigma attached to it, then that can add to that stress and that worry. So when it's out there, people feel more comfortable. But if they don't want to, then that's fine too. But at least make the offer. And they may come back to you later on and say, actually, do you remember earlier you asked? Well, actually, I'm not all right. And then you can find a way to actually address that and find the tools to help them address it. So as union reps and activists, we may want to consider organising around the following ideas. And these are in the pamphlet. And I know Jonathan just alluded to them earlier. He read some of them out. So organising workplace forums for members with mental health problems. So it's just arranging in a small room, 3 or 4 people who've had experiences of mental ill health or are maybe going through a period at the time where they can all get together, because we all like to share. And if we can share with people who actually understand or have been there, it's so much healthier and so much easier to open up. So alongside that, encouraging members with mental health problems to get actively involved in these groups and forums, because they're the people who should be leading it. ULRs, health and safety reps, whoever takes that role on, you're there to facilitate. Now, obviously, if you've got experience yourself, then you can add to that. But ideally, if you can find people who are prepared with your support to actually run those forums, it's so much more powerful and people will engage much better. Talking to members informally and formally about their experiences in the workplace and union. What are their issues and what are their ideas for resolving those issues? And I have this thing, I know some of the people who know me on here will know that I constantly go on about we don't talk enough in the workplace about trade unions and what we do, because we feel uncomfortable when we raise it and everybody just sort of starts looking blank. But actually, it's important that we tell people what's happening in general discussion, invite them to come back, even if they don't agree with us, to invite them to come back and talk to us about what they think the issues are. And the same thing around mental ill health and mental well-being. It's important that we talk about these matters in the round, in general, and actually challenge some of the myths and misconceptions that people have around mental ill health and mental well-being. So organising union-led training on the issues that members with mental health problems have identified. Now, we've already mentioned the TUC e-courses, which are very good. They're only about 45 minutes to an hour long, really informative. The first one I actually did was around the menopause in the workplace. And actually, I learned an awful lot from that. And I thought, you're not going to learn much in an hour. But it did actually change my perspective on how we see that. And it is an important issue, and it's an upcoming important issue, which also, interestingly, includes mental well-being issues. You can the RMT education organisation have actually got bite-sized training. I'm not sure if they've got any mental well-being training, but I'm sure they can certainly produce some. Now, these are designed to be given or to be done during a branch meeting or just prior to a branch meeting. So again, it's 45 minutes. It's a discussion-led learning opportunity to actually look in depth, a little bit in depth, at some of the things that are going on and what the union can do about it as a union and what individuals can do about it. So it's a really good way of learning. It's peer-led learning, and it's really interesting. So I recommend that. Ensuring the union's equality structures are in place and supported. Well, that's very important. If we're going to go lecturing people, then we need to be on it ourselves. And we're not perfect. No organisation is perfect. But it's important that when issues are raised, they're dealt with. And in fact, I know Bob Crow Education Centre in Doncaster went through quite a large, financially large project recently to make the centre a lot more disabled friendly, because a lot of issues were brought up through the Disability Advisory Committee within the union. And so they had a full audit done and they spent an awful lot of money bringing stuff up to scratch to make sure that it's accessible without making people stand out, which is also very important. Engaging with local campaign groups and charities on equality campaigns in the workplace and local communities. So important. There are so many organisations out there, people like the local trades union councils, people like Mind, who organise local branches just the way we do. And it's important that we reach out and work with them and actually look at possible campaigns that we can run around those. Campaigning on stress, and quite often when you talk to managers about stress, their eyes just go up in the air because there's an awful lot of suspicion about people who go off with stress, saying they're just blagging it and stuff like that. Well, it is a real thing. It's a very real thing, and it's actually become more to the fore now since the railway industry has introduced the fatigue index, and stress is a very big enemy of people staying safe at work. So it's important that we look at that and organise around that. Just organising joint events and activities that involve the wider community, as I said earlier. And remember, union reps, as Jonathan said earlier, are opinion informers in the community as well as the workplace. So let's get out there and just make that happen. Now, as I said earlier, the RMT have produced an excellent pamphlet, which Jonathan has already mentioned, and it sets out how the union is dealing with mental health. But it also talks about the simple things that we can all do to make things better. Use information within the pamphlet to organise your local campaigns. It's an area that many managers, lower tier and senior, are still very nervous of and will, if you allow it, just ignore it. So it is our duty as reps and activists to raise the subject of mental health with them and support and encourage them in addressing what needs to be done. Mental health is an industrial issue and a health and safety issue, but it is also a very personal human condition. Therefore, if we can work with managers to make the work environment a better, more inclusive and less judgmental, then that surely must be the way forward. So check your notice boards for any information already out there. Find out which managers have the lead on mental wellbeing. Ask to meet with them, offer to work with them to improve mental wellbeing in your workplace. Do a survey. Whatever way you do it is up to you. You can use SurveyMonkey or just go around with bits of paper, whatever. But find out how many people have had mental health episodes, if they want to tell you, of course. And offer to do a local plan around addressing mental wellbeing and make sure people are aware of the things put in place. It's all very well putting stuff in place, but if you don't tell people, then it just sits on a notice board and goes unnoticed. So not all managers are willing to engage for a variety of reasons, from being a difficult personality, and I'm sure we've all come across those, budget concerns, fear of being overwhelmed by responses, or maybe they have unresolved mental issues themselves. So where possible, lobby them, answer their concerns with mitigation or clarify the truth versus their assumptions and fears. Don't expect to win them over straight away, but keep up the pressure, keep lobbying, keep putting information in front of them. Email them once a week with updates and information on mental wellbeing. Ask your local or industrial reps to raise it at agenda meetings. Use the learning agenda to educate people about it. Get your branch to pay for local leaflets or use the RMT pamphlet. Involve your full-time officer if necessary. As a fighting democratic union, RMT has always understood that the ability to improve and defend working conditions lies ultimately in the unity and strength of our organisation. And so it is with the issues of mental health. Thank you.
Thanks, Ivor. Some inspiring words there, I think, about this. Lots to take away. And goodness me, time is certainly ticking. So I'm just going to... But no, fantastic, really interesting. I'm just going to hand over to Lisa to sum up and talk about next steps. I just think read the video. We've got some ways to work around that because I don't think it's going to work with the sound, I'm afraid, at the moment. But it's certainly something we can send out to you. But just over to Lisa now to talk about next steps and to sum up. Sorry, you.
Yes,
there you go.
Am I there? I'll just keep it really brief because we will be able to send you out an email which to everybody that's attended today, which I think will be really helpful for you. So I think the key thing for me here is all of the ideas we've said, listening to the chat and some of the issues you've got in the workplace. That meeting's really important with management, or doing a mental health awareness day. So I'm going to purely talk now for the last couple of minutes on the learning agenda, if you like, and educating people. And I think where to start, we're the people to start with. Use your facility day. Get yourself trained. Get yourself a qualification if that's what you want in mental health awareness or mental health first aid, and take it from there. Take your certificate into management. I've done this training. Let's try and roll this out. This is what we can achieve. So I think the key thing is identifying what you want from the training, and any of the learning team will be more than happy to assist you in this. So do you want a qualification? Do you want a short course? Is it something you want to just do every day for 10 minutes? Do you just want to watch a 45-minute e-note video? There's lots and lots we can do. So just some of the things that are on offer at the moment. If you want a very short course, we have raising awareness of mental health, which will help you with management. That doesn't come with a qualification, but it'll be 10 minutes every day. Working from home and mental health, something the team have talked about a lot lately. We're struggling to work from home. If John's here listening to the webinar, he's used to being out every single day in Network Rail talking to people, finds it a massive impact to be working from home and working remotely. It is very difficult. So there's lots of things out there at the moment about your mental health and working from home. Lots of things about your children and their mental health. So that's something that you can look at, and how it's impacting on them, the current situation. There's some brilliant TUC notes, which Ivor and Anna have both already mentioned, but there is a mental health in the workplace short e-note that's available. I will send you the link to that. Then on top of that, there's over 20 free mental health courses at the moment that last anything from 45 minutes to 6 weeks. But some of the ones we've got that have level 2 and level 3 qualifications linked, depending on whereabouts you live. We have mental health first aid, we have awareness of mental health problems, and we've also got a counselling certificate, a level 2 counselling certificate at the moment. So there's lots and lots out there. I think the easiest thing for us to do is send you a link with all of the training that can be done. I send you the available websites where you can get resources, posters, free pens, stickers, lots of free stuff out there at the moment on the back of Mental Health Awareness Week. And just please, if any of you have got any learning requirements, need signposting or need some advice, your RMT Learning team are more than happy to speak to you about that. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Lisa. So yeah, that brings us to the end of, I think, a really interesting and informative webinar with loads of ideas and suggestions about how to bring this into the workplace. Look out for the email that hopefully you'll get later today or later this week from Lisa and Ivor. So all that remains for me to say is to thank everybody for attending. You've been great, and thank you to Ivor, Lisa and Jonathan for speaking so well. And yeah, have a good rest of the day, and we'll see you again soon. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.